Honey, either our dog is possessed or he sees something we don't. That's what I told my wife one night, standing in the hallway of our small home in Springfield, Missouri, holding the baby monitor in one hand and a cup of cold chamomile tea in the other. My voice was shaky, not from fear exactly, but from that eerie kind of uncertainty that sets in when you can't explain something. I'm Daniel Whitaker, 36, hardware store manager, new dad, and proud owner of a shaggy old mutt named Cooper. Cooper's a mix of golden retriever and maybe some kind of sheepdog, with a lopsided ear and paws way too big for his body. We rescued him 8 years ago from a shelter when he was just a bony little furball. Never once in all those years did he behave oddly. Loyal to a fault, gentle with everyone, and the kind of dog who'd let toddlers climb on his back, while he just wagged his tail like it was the best day of his life. But 3 weeks after we brought our baby boy, Caleb, home from the hospital, Cooper started doing something strange. It started subtly. Every night around 9, just as we were settling down to watch something on Netflix or just breathe after the chaos of the day, Cooper would get up from his usual spot by the fireplace and trot into Caleb's nursery. At first, we thought it was sweet, protective even. We figured maybe he was checking on the newest member of the pack. Then it got weird. He wouldn't leave. Not for water, not for treats, not even for us. He would just sit there, perfectly still, staring into the crib. The first few nights, we chalked it up to instinct. Dogs have a sixth sense, people say. Maybe Cooper was just being overprotective. We didn't worry much, until the third night in a row when we noticed he was staring so hard, it looked like he wasn't even blinking. I remember whispering to Claire, "What is he looking at?" She watched him through the cracked nursery door, arms crossed over her hoodie. Maybe the baby's moving. Maybe he smells something. But Caleb was asleep, still and quiet, his chest gently rising and falling. Nothing was in the crib but him, swaddled in his little blanket with the blue stars. No toys, no stuffed animals, nothing dangling overhead. By the 5th night, Claire and I were both starting to get unnerved. Cooper's behavior wasn't changing. It was escalating. Now he wouldn't just sit. He'd growl under his breath, just barely audible. Not aggressive, but like he was warning someone, something. That's when I said it. "Honey, either our dog is possessed or he sees something we don't." She laughed nervously. "Don't be ridiculous. Maybe he's just anxious." But I could tell she didn't believe it either. We tried everything. We brought Cooper out of the room with us. He'd whine and scratch at the door until we let him back in. We even moved Caleb's crib into our bedroom for a night. That was the only time Cooper didn't sit and stare. He slept at the foot of our bed like normal. So we moved Caleb back to the nursery, just to see. Sure enough, the dog followed and resumed his nightly vigil. Finally, after nearly 2 weeks of this, I decided to set up the baby monitor camera to record. Not the usual grainy night vision feed we watched from the living room, but a full recording. We wanted to see what was happening when we weren't looking. That first night we recorded, nothing unusual happened. Cooper did his usual thing. Sat there, staring, occasionally sniffing the air or shifting his weight. No movement in the crib. Caleb slept like a rock. No noises on the audio. Night 2, same thing. By night 3, we were starting to feel silly. Maybe this was just Cooper being weird. Maybe he was detecting some subtle noise in the house. A creaky pipe, the hum of the baby monitor, something we couldn't hear. Then, night 4 happened. I played back the footage that morning while Claire was feeding Caleb in the kitchen. I scrubbed through the usual quiet hours, 10 p.m., 11 p.m., 12:30 a.m., then paused around 2:47 a.m. Something had changed. Cooper stood up. That alone was odd. He never moved from his spot. But this time, he stood rigid, ears up, hackles slightly raised. His tail was still not wagging. He stared toward the left side of the crib, away from the camera, and gave a single, sharp bark. Then another. Then a growl that raised the hair on my own arms. I leaned in, volume up. That's when I heard it. A noise. Not from the baby, not from the house. A low, almost undetectable creak, like the sound of a floorboard slowly bending under pressure. There was no one in the room, no one visible. Yet Cooper was growling like someone was there. And then, without warning, he lunged, full leap, straight at the air beside the crib. His body hit the side wall, claws scrambling on the hardwood. Then he turned and barked again, this time at the window. Nothing was there. I called Claire over. She watched in silence, a spoon of oatmeal halfway to her mouth. "That's not normal," she said finally. "Nope." That afternoon, I went through the house, top to bottom, attic, basement, closets, looking for signs of a break-in, a pest, anything. Nothing. No open windows, no footprints, no claw marks, no sign that anyone had been in that nursery besides us. But every night after that, the same thing happened. Cooper would go in at 9. Sit. Wait. Then sometime between 2 and 3 in the morning, he'd start growling and barking at seemingly nothing. I started sleeping on the floor outside Caleb's room. Not because I thought something was going to hurt my son. I didn't even know what I believed. But because it felt wrong not to. One night, I heard it myself, just after 3. A low thump from inside the nursery. I went in, heart racing. Cooper was standing rigid, head lowered, growling toward the window. The air in the room felt cold, not freezing, but definitely colder than the hallway. And Caleb, still asleep, peaceful, unbothered. The next morning, Claire and I made a decision. If something was in that room, spiritual, electrical, whatever, we needed to understand it. We installed a second camera. This one had full night vision, motion detection, and sound sensitivity. We bought it off a tech website, probably meant for ghost hunters or something, and set it up in the opposite corner from the first. The footage we got that week changed everything. One night, around 2:56 a.m., the motion detector tripped. Both cameras turned on. And for just 2 seconds, only 2, we saw something. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't a person. It was light. A flash of bluish-white shimmer, like sunlight reflecting off water. It hovered for a second beside the crib, then disappeared. Cooper barked the moment it appeared. I played it back 20 times. The shimmer never lasted more than a second or 2. But it was there, real. Claire burst into tears when she saw it, not out of fear, out of something else. Relief, maybe. Awe. Because Caleb, in that exact moment, smiled in his sleep. Not just a twitch, but a full-on smile. Like someone was whispering to him. Like he was safe. We didn't tell anyone right away. Who would believe it? We were 2 tired new parents with a rescue dog and a blurry baby monitor clip. But the feeling that filled our house after that, something had changed. Cooper still goes to Caleb's room every night, but now he lies down beside the crib, relaxed. No growling, no barking. Just watching, guarding. Like whatever he was protecting us from is gone. Or maybe it never meant harm to begin with. Whatever it was, Cooper saw it first. And we've never looked at him the same way since. I used to think dogs just reacted to their environment. Noise, smell, body language, things like that. But after what we saw on the camera, I couldn't stop wondering, What if they see more than we do? What if Cooper wasn't just reacting to something strange in the house, but actually sensing something we were too dull to notice? I started reading. Not just casual Googling, but actual research. Articles, old folklore, even animal behavior journals. Claire teased me about it at first, calling me Ghost Dad, but she wasn't laughing when I showed her an article about dogs reacting to unseen presences and light anomalies. We weren't the first family to report it, not by a long shot. Still, none of it really gave us a solid explanation. 100 theories, but no answers. And the thing was, life kept moving. I still had to get up for work at 6, still had to shovel snow off the driveway, still had to change diapers and take the trash out and try to be a decent husband while figuring all of this out. It became this bizarre side mission in the middle of regular life. Cooper, meanwhile, was calm. Peaceful, even. If anything, he seemed happier. Not giddy or hyper like a puppy, just purposeful. Like he had a job to do and he was doing it well. Every night, same thing. He'd enter Caleb's room like clockwork, curl up near the crib and keep watch. Then came the morning I walked in and found Caleb wide awake, not crying, just staring up at the ceiling with his tiny hand outstretched. Cooper was lying next to the crib, tail gently thumping, and Caleb was smiling like someone was making funny faces at him. Only no one was there. Claire was behind me and saw it too. "He's looking at something," she said softly. I nodded. "Yeah, and I don't think it's us." From that day on, strange little things started happening. Nothing scary or dangerous, just odd. Toys would be in a different spot than where we left them. The mobile above the crib would spin, even when the window was closed and there wasn't the slightest breeze. Once, we walked in and found Caleb's blanket perfectly folded at the end of the crib. Not crumpled or kicked off like usual, but folded. Like someone had tucked it neatly before leaving. Claire and I started referring to it as the Shimmer. It felt silly giving it a name, but it made it easier to talk about. We never felt scared of it. If anything, it felt like something watching over our son. Not some creepy spirit from a horror movie, but a warm presence. Kind, even. Cooper acted like he trusted it. That was enough for us. I kept the cameras rolling. Not every night showed something, but every once in a while we'd catch that same flicker of light. Just for a second. Always around 2 or 3 in the morning. Sometimes Caleb would smile in his sleep when it happened. Once he giggled, a soft little baby laugh that made Claire tear up right there at the kitchen table. "Whatever it is," she whispered, "it makes him happy." I started saving the footage. I made a private folder on my laptop and backed it up twice, once on a flash drive, once in the cloud. I didn't know why, but I felt like we were documenting something rare. Special. Then one night, something different happened. It was a Wednesday. Cold outside, wind howling against the windows. Claire had gone to bed early, wiped out from a rough day. Caleb was finally asleep after one of those nights where nothing soothed him. I was sitting in the living room, sipping peppermint tea, trying to wind down. Cooper was in the nursery, per usual. Then I heard the bark. Sharp. Urgent. I rushed down the hall, heart pounding. When I opened the nursery door, I froze. Cooper was standing, eyes locked on the far wall. Not the crib. Not the window. The wall. Caleb was sound asleep, but Cooper looked like he was guarding the whole room with every muscle in his body. And on the wall, I swear to you, there was a faint glow. No shape, no image, just a shimmer of bluish light, pulsing like a heartbeat, I stepped forward, blinking hard. It faded the moment I moved. Cooper turned and looked at me. Not scared, not confused. Almost like he was saying, "You saw it too." I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what we'd stumbled into. And more than that, why our son? Why our dog? Why this house? The next day, I called my brother, Kyle. He's a science teacher up in Des Moines, logical, no nonsense, the kind of guy who uses spreadsheets to plan vacations. I didn't tell him everything, but I asked about electromagnetic fields and light phenomena, whether certain materials or devices could cause flickers of light. He said maybe, but not likely, especially not the same time every night. "Sounds more like an electrical glitch," he offered. Maybe, but I knew it wasn't. That weekend, we had guests. Claire's parents came in from Jefferson City. I thought maybe we were being dramatic. Maybe a change of pace would snap us back to normal. But even they noticed. Sunday morning, Claire's dad, Gary, sat down with me in the living room. He leaned in close and said, "That dog of yours, he's something else. Last night I got up to use the bathroom and found him sitting in front of Caleb's door like a statue. Wouldn't move when I walked by." I nodded. He's been doing that a lot. Gary sipped his coffee, then said quietly, "When we were kids, my grandpa used to say, dogs could see angels. He really believed it." I didn't answer. But something about that stuck with me. Angels. I never considered myself overly religious. Claire and I go to church on Christmas Eve, maybe Easter. We believe in being good people. But now I started wondering, what if there was more going on than we ever thought? Later that night, after her parents left, I mentioned it to Claire. "You think it could be—" She paused, searching for the word. "A guardian angel?" Maybe. Maybe it's just love, you know? Love from someone who's not here anymore. She nodded, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I don't feel afraid of it. I feel comforted." Me too. Still, I wanted more answers. I reached out to a local vet who specialized in animal behavior. Her name was Dr. Elaine Myers. I told her our dog was acting protective around our newborn and asked if she'd ever heard of anything like it. She said, "Animals can pick up on all kinds of things. Hormonal changes, tiny noises, even health issues before we know they're there." I debated telling her the rest, but held back. Just thanked her and hung up. She wasn't the one who needed to understand. One night, I came home late from work. Snow was falling gently, the sky glowing from the street lamps. I stepped inside, stomped my boots, and paused. The house felt different. Warmer somehow. Not temperature-wise, just a feeling. Claire met me at the door. She was smiling. "You need to see something," she whispered. She led me to the nursery. Inside, Caleb was asleep. Cooper was on the floor, snoring softly, and floating beside the crib just for a moment. The shimmer. Clearer than ever. A soft, glowing presence. No face, no form, just light. It hovered for maybe 5 seconds, then vanished. Claire reached for my hand. "I see it too," she whispered. That night, we slept better than we had in months. Whatever it was real, and it meant no harm. If anything, it felt like it was here to help. The next few weeks passed like a dream. Caleb started sleeping through the night more often. Cooper seemed content, peaceful. The shimmer still came occasionally, and every time Caleb smiled in his sleep. Then, in the middle of February, something happened that changed the course of everything. It was 3 in the morning. I heard a crash from Caleb's room and bolted down the hallway. When I opened the door, I saw the window wide open, the curtain fluttering wildly, and Cooper, growling, teeth bared, standing between the crib and the window. To be continued. I froze in the doorway, breath caught in my throat. Cooper's growl wasn't like the ones he gave before. Not low and cautious, but deep and guttural. Protective, ready. His whole body was tense, eyes fixed on the open window like he was daring something to come in. I rushed over, heart pounding. Caleb was still in his crib, somehow still sleeping through the commotion. But I scooped him up anyway, wrapping him in my arms. "Claire!" I shouted down the hall. She was there in seconds, robe half-tied, eyes wide. "What happened?" I gestured to the window. "It was open when I came in. I don't know how. It was locked. I checked it myself before bed." Claire's face went pale as she looked toward the gusts of cold air swirling through the room. "Did someone try to break in?" "I don't know. Cooper's the only reason nothing got in, if anything even tried." She turned to the dog. He was still in guard mode, staring out the window, tail stiff, ears sharp. Not barking, not whining, just alert, like he was waiting for a second wave. I passed Caleb to Claire and moved toward the window cautiously. I checked the lock. It had been broken cleanly, the latch bent outward like someone had forced it from the outside. But there were no footprints in the snow below. No marks on the siding. Nothing to suggest anyone had climbed up. We were on the second floor. It didn't make sense. That night we barely slept. Claire sat in the rocker holding Caleb while I checked the entire house. Locks, doors, windows. I even went outside with a flashlight and stomped through the snow, trying to find any sign of a person or animal. There was nothing. No tracks, no shadows. Just silence and cold wind. In the morning, I filed a police report. I kept it simple. Just that someone had tried to open the nursery window, the latch was broken, and we were concerned. The officer who came to the house was polite, but skeptical. "No signs of forced entry besides the latch?" he asked. "Just that. And our dog was acting defensive." He jotted something in his notebook, glanced around the room, then shrugged. "Could be kids messing around, or a bird, maybe, slammed into the window. Sometimes the impact breaks the latch." From the outside? He didn't have a real answer for that. Promised to add us to the patrol route for a few nights, then left. After that, the shimmer didn't appear for a week. Not once. It was like whatever had been watching over us had backed off. Or maybe something else had scared it away. Cooper never left Caleb's side. He followed him from room to room during the day and stood guard at night. If we took Caleb downstairs, Cooper came too. If Claire took him into the backyard for fresh air, Cooper was on high alert, sniffing the wind, scanning the tree line. Whatever had happened that night, Cooper wasn't about to let it happen again. Claire and I tried to get back to normal, but everything felt slightly off. We were always listening, watching, bracing. Caleb didn't seem affected. He was still giggling, hitting milestones, reaching for toys, and smiling every time Cooper nuzzled his cheek. But we noticed something new. Every time Caleb started to fuss or cry, and we weren't in the room yet, Cooper would go to him first. And when we'd get there, Cooper would already have him quieted somehow, just lying near him, sometimes with his nose against the crib bars. One morning, I came in and found Caleb wide awake, gurgling, reaching through the crib toward Cooper's head. And Cooper, gentle, patient Cooper, was letting Caleb grab tufts of his fur. No complaints, no movement, just lying there like he was made for that moment. I bent down and kissed the top of Cooper's head. You're the best thing that's ever happened to this family." That afternoon, I went to the hardware store where I worked and used my lunch break to pick up a new window latch. A heavy-duty one this time, with a built-in sensor. I wasn't taking chances anymore. Back at home, while Caleb napped and Cooper stood watch beside the crib, I installed the latch and tested it 3 times. Solid. Secure. I added a motion sensor light just outside the window and one of those doorbell cameras on the front porch, even though we lived in a quiet cul-de-sac where neighbors waved from their porches and kids biked in the street. That night, the shimmer returned. It wasn't like before, not just a flash or glow. This time, it lingered. Long enough for both Claire and I to watch, wide-eyed, standing in the doorway while Cooper sat calmly beside the crib. It hovered above Caleb's head, casting a soft glow over his face. Caleb blinked awake, looked up, and giggled. He reached toward the light, and for a moment, just a breath, it shimmered brighter. Then it faded. Claire turned to me. "You saw that, right? That wasn't just me?" I nodded slowly. "I saw it. I don't think it's here because of us," she whispered. "I think it's here because of Caleb." "And Cooper's connected to it somehow," I added. "He knows when it's coming. Maybe he even calls to it." Claire touched the crib rail, her fingers tracing a groove Caleb had made with his tiny nails. "Or maybe he's the bridge." The idea settled in our minds. Not fearful, not thrilling, just a quiet acceptance. We didn't know what was happening, but we weren't going to run from it. A few days later, I had an idea. I set up a 3rd camera. This one was different. I rigged it with a custom infrared filter and sound magnifier, something I read about on a paranormal tech forum. I wasn't trying to catch a ghost. I just wanted to understand what we were living with. Maybe see it more clearly. Maybe hear something we'd missed before. The first 2 nights, nothing new. The shimmer came, lingered, vanished. Caleb responded to it the same way, happy, peaceful. Cooper remained calm. But on the 3rd night, just before the shimmer appeared, the audio picked something up, a sound. Soft, gentle, like a lullaby being hummed. It wasn't the mobile, it wasn't the heater or the wind. It was music, subtle, like someone humming in a nearby room. No lyrics, just a soothing melody that rose and fell like waves. I played it back a dozen times. Claire stood behind me, arms folded, leaning over my shoulder. "It sounds like," she paused, thinking, "like someone comforting him." I saved the clip, labeled it Caleb Night Hum MP3, and stored it with the rest of the footage. My collection was starting to look like a documentary. Then the local newspaper ran a story. Family Saraj stops intruder, window latch broken, infant safe. They interviewed Claire. She gave a careful, simple account. No talk of shimmer, light, or humming lullabies. Just a loyal dog, a suspicious window, and a protective instinct that possibly saved our son. The story made its way online. People started messaging us. Some offered praise. Some asked for interviews. A few sent stories of their own. Dogs who had barked before earthquakes, sensed illness, predicted seizures. One email stood out. It was from a woman named Judith in Maine. "My dog used to stare at my daughter's crib every night, too," she wrote. "He passed away 3 years ago, but even now sometimes I still feel like he's watching over her, and she swears she sees lights that sing." Claire and I read the message twice. Lights that sing. We replied, asked questions, exchanged details. Judith's story wasn't identical to ours, but it echoed in the same way. Something loving, something luminous, something more than we could explain. After that, I stopped trying to explain it. We started to just live with it. Cooper kept his watch. The shimmer came and went. Caleb grew. He started sitting up, then babbling, then reaching for things. He especially loved Cooper's ears. Tugged on them constantly. Cooper never flinched. And then, one Saturday morning, Caleb said his first word. We were sitting on the carpet in the living room. Sunlight streamed through the windows. Cooper lay beside him, half asleep. Caleb looked up, grinned, and said clearly, "Coop." Claire gasped. I nearly dropped my coffee. Did he just say, "Yes," she said, hands over her mouth. Caleb looked between us, then back at Cooper. "Coop," he repeated. Cooper lifted his head and gave a soft bark. We laughed, clapped, hugged. It felt like the most natural thing in the world, and yet the most magical. That night, the shimmer came earlier than usual, right at bedtime. And this time, it didn't float above the crib. It hovered near Cooper. The cameras caught the whole thing. A radiant light wrapping gently around the dog, like a hug made of starlight. Cooper closed his eyes and leaned into it. Claire and I watched from the hallway, speechless. The shimmer glowed for nearly 10 seconds, then slowly faded. Cooper turned toward us. "And I swear," he smiled. Claire didn't say a word when she saw the shimmer wrap around Cooper. Neither did I. We both just stood there, frozen in the hallway, hearts pounding for a reason we couldn't quite explain. It wasn't fear. It wasn't even awe. It was something else, something softer, stranger, a kind of peace that made your eyes sting. The glow faded as slowly as it had come, dissolving into the air like steam. Cooper turned his head toward us and gave a quiet chuff. Then he padded out of the nursery like nothing had happened and flopped onto his usual spot by the fireplace. Caleb, still wide awake in his crib, cooed and reached for the ceiling, like he thought the light might come back if he just stretched far enough. I went to him, brushed his fine hair with my fingers, and leaned over the crib rail. "You saw it too, didn't you?" He blinked up at me, big blue eyes wide and curious. Then he smiled, not a sleepy, random baby smile, a real one, like we shared a secret. After that night, things started happening more frequently. Not louder or more dramatic, just more often. The shimmer would appear every couple of nights. Sometimes it hovered over the crib, sometimes it swirled near the ceiling. Once, it danced across the nursery wall, lighting up the pastel forest mural Claire had painted before Caleb was born. And Cooper, our steady, shaggy boy, was always calm when it happened, always still. Like he wasn't surprised at all. I kept documenting everything, not because I planned to show it to anyone, but because I needed to understand it. I had folders of videos now, all labeled by date and time, complete with notes about Caleb's mood, Cooper's behavior, and anything unusual we noticed in the house. Claire teased me about being the world's most affectionate paranormal researcher, but she started journaling too. Her entries were more emotional than mine, written in a leather-bound notebook she kept in her nightstand. She said it helped her process things she didn't want to say out loud. One night, after she'd fallen asleep, I flipped through a few pages. She had written things like, "I feel like we're being watched, but not in a bad way." And, "Sometimes I think Cooper understands more about this than we ever will." She even sketched a picture of the shimmer. Just a simple, swirling light hovering near the crib. It wasn't fancy, but it looked almost exactly like what we'd seen. Then came the day Caleb started pointing. It happened in the middle of breakfast. Claire was feeding him oatmeal, and I was skimming emails on my phone. Caleb suddenly dropped his spoon and pointed toward the hallway. Not random baby flailing, An actual, deliberate point. Claire turned to look, but there was nothing there. "What do you see, buddy?" she asked. Caleb stared at the empty space for another few seconds, then giggled and clapped his hands. Cooper, lying beside the high chair, lifted his head, ears twitching. He looked in the same direction, then wagged his tail once and lay back down. It happened again that afternoon, this time in the living room. Caleb pointed to the far corner near the bookshelf, grinned, and said, "Hi." Claire looked at me. Did he just say hi? Pretty sure he did. We both looked at Cooper, who had perked up again. He gave a soft bark, the kind he used when he saw a squirrel on the porch or a neighbor's cat in the driveway. Claire knelt beside Caleb. "Who are you saying hi to, sweetheart?" Caleb looked at her, smiled wider, and said, "Light." We stared at each other. That night, the shimmer came again. And this time, Caleb sat up in his crib, pointed at it, and whispered, "Hi, Light." I watched through the monitor, frozen. The shimmer hovered a few feet away, pulsing gently. Cooper stood, walked to the edge of the crib, and looked up at it. Then he sat down and let out a single, quiet bark. Caleb giggled. "Light, happy." I didn't know what to say. I didn't even know what to feel. The next morning, I replayed the footage. The shimmer was clearer than usual, more solid somehow. It had a rhythm, almost like it breathed, and when Caleb spoke, it pulsed brighter. It was like they were communicating. Claire and I sat at the kitchen table while Caleb napped, watching the video on my laptop. "Do you think he's special?" she asked quietly. I shook my head, not in denial, but in disbelief. I think whatever this is, it's drawn to him. Or maybe he's always been part of it, and we're just finally seeing it. Claire reached over and took my hand. He's safe. That's what matters. That weekend, we visited my parents. They live just outside Columbia in a little farmhouse surrounded by fields. It was supposed to be a normal visit. Catch up, let them see the baby, have a meal that didn't involve frozen peas or baby wipes. But even there, strange things followed us. The first night, Cooper wouldn't settle. He kept pacing between the guest room where we set up Caleb's travel crib and the hallway. My mom noticed. "Is he always this restless?" she asked. "Only when he thinks something's nearby," I said before I could stop myself. She raised an eyebrow. "Nearby?" Claire and I exchanged a glance. We hadn't told them about the shimmer. It felt too unbelievable, even for family. That night, the baby monitor crackled with static around 2 a.m. I rushed in to check. Cooper was sitting beside the crib, staring at the corner of the ceiling. I looked up, heart pounding. Nothing. Then I saw Caleb's face. He was smiling in his sleep. We didn't see the shimmer that night, but I knew it had come. The next morning, my dad pulled me aside while Claire and Mom took Caleb for a walk. "Your dog," he said. "He's different." I waited. He's not just protective, he's aware, like he knows something the rest of us don't. I didn't say anything. "When I was a boy," he continued, "we had a beagle named Rusty. Slept under my bed every night. When my grandpa died, Rusty barked at the same moment, even though Grandpa lived 5 towns away. I always thought dogs could sense things." He looked at me, eyes steady. "You don't have to explain it, but I know that dog of yours is watching over something important." On the drive home, Claire looked out the window and said, "Do you think Cooper was meant for Caleb?" "I don't think we chose him," I said. "I think he found us because of Caleb." That night back home, everything felt normal again. Caleb went to sleep without fussing. Cooper curled up by the crib. Claire and I watched a movie in the living room. We almost started believing we were getting used to all of it, until the light in the hallway flickered. Just once. A quick dimming and return. Then the baby monitor picked up a whisper. Not static. Not feedback. A whisper. Claire grabbed my arm. "Did you hear that?" I nodded, already moving toward the nursery. Cooper was standing this time, not tense, just alert, staring at the air next to the crib. Caleb was sitting up, holding the rails, looking at something we couldn't see. Then he said, "Night-night light." The shimmer appeared, brighter than ever, not just floating, but moving, circling the crib slowly, almost playfully. Cooper stayed close but didn't move. Claire stood in the doorway, one hand over her mouth. And then, for the first time, we saw something more. A shape. Not clear. Not human. But within the shimmer, something shimmered deeper. A flicker of form. A suggestion of something with intention. With presence. Almost like arms reaching out, not to grab, but to comfort. Caleb reached back. The shimmer gently brushed past his hand. I took a step forward. Claire grabbed my arm. "Don't interrupt it," she whispered. "Let them be." We watched in silence. When the shimmer faded, Caleb lay down and drifted to sleep immediately. Cooper yawned and curled up on the rug. Claire and I didn't speak again until we were back in bed. "I think we're part of something bigger," she said softly. I stared at the ceiling. Yeah, and I think Cooper was always more than just our dog. Outside, the wind picked up. But inside, everything felt warm. We didn't have all the answers. But we had each other. And Cooper. And the shimmer. Whatever was coming next, we were ready. The next morning, Claire made pancakes shaped like stars. She said it was just for fun, but I think we both felt the weight of the night before. There was a kind of stillness between us at breakfast, like neither of us wanted to say too much, or act like everything was normal, when we both knew we'd seen something that went beyond explanation. Caleb giggled as he mashed blueberries into his high-chair tray, and Cooper lay beside him, head on his paws, watching with the tired but content gaze of a dog who knew his watch wasn't over. Claire finally broke the silence. "We need to do something. Not to stop it, just to mark it." I looked up from my coffee. "Mark it how?" She shrugged. "I don't know. Light a candle? Write something? A name? Something real?" She was right. It wasn't about proof anymore. It was about acknowledging that this was part of our life now. Something sacred. I suggested we plant something. A tree, maybe, or a bush. Something alive. Claire loved the idea. So we loaded Caleb into the car, Cooper hopped in the back, and we headed to the local nursery. We walked the rows of saplings, letting Caleb wave his hands at the fluttering leaves and whisper to the breeze like he was greeting old friends. In the end, we chose a dogwood. White flowers, simple but elegant. The kind of tree that didn't try too hard to impress but made you stop and look anyway. Back home, we planted it just outside the nursery window. Cooper sat in the grass while I dug the hole, occasionally sniffing the air, ears flicking at unseen noises. Claire held Caleb in her lap, and together we said a quiet thank you. Not to anything specific, just to whatever was listening. That night, I placed one of the cameras facing the tree, and the next morning, when I reviewed the footage, I found something. At 2:53 a.m., While Cooper sat, as usual, in the nursery and Caleb slept soundly, the shimmer appeared. Outside this time. It hovered above the tree for just a few seconds, a soft halo around the new branches, then faded as quickly as it came. I watched it twice, then saved the file. Labeled it Tree Night 1. Claire and I didn't talk about it much after that. It became part of the routine. We woke up, took care of Caleb, played with Cooper, ate meals, laughed, and at night we waited. The shimmer never showed at the exact same time. Sometimes it was just after midnight, sometimes closer to dawn. Sometimes it came 2 nights in a row, then disappeared for 3. But it always came back, and Cooper always knew when. One evening, just before sunset, Claire's younger brother Zach came over. He'd been on a construction job in Kansas City and hadn't seen Caleb in person yet. He walked in carrying a box of building blocks, all proud of himself, then stopped short in the doorway when Cooper growled. Not loud, not angry, just one low sound, deep in his throat. I stood up from the couch. "Coop, it's okay. It's Zach." But Cooper didn't move. His eyes stayed fixed on Zach. Not menacing, just suspicious. Zach held up his hands. "Whoa, okay. What did I do?" Claire walked over. "He's never growled at anyone. Not like that." Cooper finally stepped aside, but he kept glancing over his shoulder for the next half hour, like he was waiting for something to happen. Zach tried to brush it off. "Maybe I smell like the job site. Been around a lot of paint fumes lately." Claire didn't answer. She was watching Cooper, who had now taken up position between Caleb's playmat and Zach. That night, Zach stayed for dinner. Cooper stayed quiet, but never left Caleb's side. Later, after Zach left, Claire said, "You know, when we were kids, Zach used to get in trouble a lot. Real trouble. Mom never told you, but once he set a fire in the neighbor's shed." "He was 12, I said. Claire nodded. "But still, he always had this shadow around him. Not evil, just restless." I didn't know what to make of it, but I couldn't ignore the way Cooper had acted. Or how, for the first time in weeks, the shimmer didn't appear. 2 nights passed. No shimmer. On the 3rd night, it returned. And this time, it came with something else. A sound. Not music this time. A whisper. Only one word. Safe. I replayed it over and over. Claire listened too. It was faint, buried under the hum of the monitor, but clear. A soft feminine voice. Gentle. Assured. Safe. Claire touched her chest. It felt maternal. "Like a mother," I said quietly. She nodded. "Maybe it's not about Caleb at all. Maybe it's about protection. Legacy. Love passed down." The idea clung to us. We started talking about people we'd lost. Claire's grandmother, who passed just a year before Caleb was born. My aunt, who used to rescue dogs and had a knack for finding the ones who were scared and scarred, but full of love. "Do you think it could be someone we knew?" Claire asked one night. I didn't know, but it made sense. It made sense in a way no scientific theory could explain. And then something new happened. Caleb started reaching for the shimmer before it appeared. One night, I was rocking him to sleep, the white noise machine humming softly in the background. Cooper was on the rug, eyes closed. Caleb suddenly turned his head and stretched out his hand toward the far corner of the room. A moment later, the shimmer bloomed into view, right where he was pointing. Claire gasped. He knew. It happened again the next night, and again. We stopped being surprised. We started feeling grateful. Caleb's first birthday came in a blur of balloons, cupcakes, and chaos. Family filled the house. Cousins, aunts, uncles, all loud and loving. Cooper wore a little party hat and accepted bites of chicken from every plate. No Shimmer that day, just laughter and noise. That night, after everyone had left and Caleb was asleep, Claire and I sat in the nursery with Cooper at our feet. "I think this is the happiest I've ever been," she whispered. I nodded. Same. And that's when the Shimmer appeared, not above the crib, not in the corner, right in front of us. It hovered at eye level, glowing brighter than it ever had before. It pulsed once, slowly, like it was taking a breath. Then we heard it. "Thank you." 2 words, whispered in that same gentle voice. Then gone. Claire's eyes filled with tears. "Did we imagine that?" "No," I said. "We didn't." She reached for my hand, and we sat there in the glow of the baby monitor, the hush of the house wrapping around us like a blanket. Outside, the dogwood tree swayed gently in the breeze. Cooper leaned against my leg, and I scratched his ear. "You're part of this too," I murmured. He didn't move, just closed his eyes, calm as ever. The Shimmer didn't return for the rest of the week, but it didn't feel like it had left. It felt like it was resting. Whatever it was, it had given us something beyond explanation, something real. I started waking up before the Shimmer appeared, not because I heard anything, but because my body seemed to know. Some part of me had learned its rhythm. It was like living beside the tide. Even when you couldn't see it, you could feel when it was coming in. Most nights, I'd sit quietly on the nursery floor with my back against the wall, watching Caleb sleep. The room was always dimly lit by the monitor's glow and the soft nightlight we kept near the dresser. Cooper would already be in position by the crib, tail thumping once or twice as I entered, then settling again. On one of those nights, the Shimmer didn't come, at least not at the usual time. I sat there for almost an hour, heart slowing, beginning to doze. Then, out of nowhere, Cooper stood up fast, fur bristling slightly. I sat up straighter. "What is it, boy?" He didn't bark, just moved to the middle of the room and looked at the ceiling. I followed his gaze and noticed something strange, a soft ripple in the shadow where the ceiling met the corner, like heat waves rising from pavement. Then, a slow glow began to build. This Shimmer was different. It moved slower, stretched wider. It didn't pulse or drift. It expanded, like it was unfolding itself. I held my breath. The light brightened, then suddenly flickered and split. For a second, there were 2 Shimmers. Cooper didn't growl. He wagged his tail. Caleb stirred, but didn't wake. He rolled over, reached one arm into the air, and smiled in his sleep. The twin Shimmers hovered, then began to move in slow circles, mirroring each other like a dance. Their paths stayed just above the crib, never touching it. One finally dipped lower, just close enough to brush past Caleb's blanket, and the moment it did, the other Shimmer pulsed brighter. Then, they both faded at once. I sat there long after, the silence almost loud. In the morning, I told Claire. She rubbed her temple. 2? Are you sure? Positive. I saved the footage. We watched it together. The video didn't quite capture the full glow, but you could still see the movement. The 2 orbs swirling gently, touching nothing but light. Claire leaned forward, squinting. What if they're not watching over him? What if they're learning from him? I blinked. Learning? She nodded slowly. Or maybe drawn to him. His energy. His innocence. Whatever it is. He interacts with them like it's normal. Like it's part of his world. That stuck with me all day. That week, I started paying closer attention to Caleb's behavior outside the nursery. He was talking more now. Simple words, mostly. Dog, tree, light, hi, bye, coop. He would often stop playing to look into a corner and whisper something we couldn't hear. Sometimes he giggled to himself and waved at seemingly nothing. I wasn't alarmed, but I was curious. One afternoon, I set up a camera in the living room. Not just a baby monitor, an actual wide-angle camera like the ones I'd been using in the nursery. I didn't tell Claire. I wanted to be sure before I said anything more. That night, while reviewing the footage, I found it. 2:16 p.m. Caleb playing with stacking blocks. 2:17 p.m. He pauses, looks at the fireplace. 2:17:12 p.m. A faint shimmer appears near the mantel. Just a flicker. 2:17:15 p.m. Caleb claps and says, "Light!" 2:17:18 p.m. Cooper enters the room, walks straight to Caleb, sits beside him, and looks at the same spot. 2:17:23 p.m. Shimmer fades. This was new. It wasn't confined to nighttime, or to the nursery. I set up more cameras. Within days, we had footage from the kitchen, the hallway, even the backyard. Always the same shimmer, never threatening. Always arriving when Caleb seemed calm, curious, and open. We told no one, not our parents, not friends. But we didn't hide it from Caleb. One afternoon, while playing outside near the dogwood tree, Caleb looked up suddenly and said, "2 lights." Claire crouched next to him. "What do they do, sweetheart?" He poked his chest. "They talk in here." Claire glanced at me. "In your heart?" He nodded solemnly. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. She paced the kitchen while I washed bottles. If they talk to him, is he supposed to talk back? I dried my hands. He already is? She looked at Cooper, who was watching her calmly from his usual spot. "Do you think Cooper was chosen?" I considered that. Maybe he chose us. Maybe it goes both ways. The following weekend, I received an unexpected email. It came from someone named Edna, an older woman who said she lived in Oregon and had read about our family in a local human interest blog. She didn't mention the shimmer, only that she believed dogs were conduits for the unseen. She wrote, "When my grandson was born, our old Labrador sat under his crib every night. One evening I saw a pale light rise from the floor, like smoke, and hover above the boy. I never told anyone. I just nodded to the dog and said, 'Thank you for seeing it when I couldn't.'" I shared the email with Claire. She whispered, "We're not alone." That same week, the shimmer started appearing while Caleb was awake and engaged. Not just napping or going to bed, but wide awake. Once, during breakfast, Claire was feeding him yogurt, and he stopped mid-bite, pointed to the doorway and said, "There." We both looked. The shimmer danced through the air like a wisp of cloud and disappeared before we could fully register it. Claire dropped the spoon. Caleb clapped. "Happy light." Cooper barked once, short and soft, then resumed lying near the high chair. I backed up the footage from the dining area and reviewed it after Caleb went to bed. The shimmer was there, clear as day, more vibrant than usual. I began to notice something else. The shimmer's brightness often mirrored Caleb's mood. When he was playful and giggling, it glowed warmer. When he was tired or grumpy, it stayed dimmer. It responded to him. And to Cooper. One night, after putting Caleb down, I stayed in the nursery with Cooper. He was already lying near the crib. The room was quiet, except for the faint hum of the monitor. "They listen to you too, don't they?" I asked softly. Cooper lifted his head and wagged his tail once. I reached down and stroked his back. "I don't know what we did to deserve you." He leaned into my hand. The shimmer arrived moments later. It hovered longer than usual, and for the first time, I heard something new. Not music, not whispers, a laugh, a child's laugh, not Caleb's. A different voice, just as light, just as pure, like it echoed from a distance. Then it faded. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the nursery floor with Cooper beside me, my thoughts racing. Was it another child? A memory? A soul? I didn't know. But I believed. In the days that followed, Caleb began to draw. Just scribbles at first, then shapes. Circles, lines, loops. One afternoon, he held up a crayon drawing and said, "Look, Light and Coop." Claire and I stared at it. The shapes were crude, but we could make them out. A figure that looked suspiciously like Cooper, long body, floppy ears, and above him 2 glowing ovals, floating. "You drew the shimmer," Claire said quietly. Caleb smiled. That night, I added the drawing to the top drawer of my desk, next to the USBs filled with footage and the printed logs I'd been keeping. Our quiet archive. I didn't know where it was all heading, but I felt, deep down, that we were part of something important, something waiting to be understood, and our shaggy, faithful Cooper was at the very center of it. I started taking Cooper on long walks every evening, just as the sun dipped low enough to cast everything in soft, golden hues. It felt like something we both needed, time away from the cameras, from the subtle hum of the baby monitor, from the gentle pulse of anticipation that filled our house as twilight deepened. Cooper enjoyed these walks, trotting beside me without a leash, sniffing the air, pausing occasionally to listen to sounds only he could hear. Often I wondered what his world felt like, what invisible threads he followed with his senses. His purpose seemed clearer than ever now. To guard, to guide, to be a quiet bridge between Caleb and the shimmer. One evening, as we walked down our usual wooded path, Cooper suddenly stopped. He stood still, ears perked, head tilted toward a dense cluster of trees. My pulse quickened instinctively. "What is it, Coop?" He gave a single low whine, eyes locked on something in the trees. I squinted into the growing darkness, but saw nothing. The woods were quiet. No rustling leaves, no distant animal sounds. Yet Cooper seemed fixated on something unseen, just like in the nursery. We stood there for several minutes, until finally Cooper relaxed, shook himself off, and continued walking as if nothing had happened. But my curiosity was piqued. It felt connected somehow. Back at home, Claire was putting Caleb to bed, humming softly as she rocked him. I found myself lingering in the doorway, absorbing the scene, the gentle comfort of the room, the warm glow of the nightlight, and Claire's calm presence. But my mind kept returning to Cooper's behavior in the woods. I decided to review some footage again, not of the nursery this time, but from our yard and the paths nearby. Over the past weeks, I'd placed additional cameras around the perimeter, discreetly hidden among trees and shrubs. Initially, it was just an extra precaution, a layer of reassurance. But now, it felt like there might be something more there. Late into the night, I watched the recordings, carefully scanning hours of empty, peaceful footage. Just as my eyes began to droop from exhaustion, something caught my attention. I rewound and watched again. At exactly 7:32 p.m., the camera facing the wooded area captured a faint, familiar glow, a shimmer weaving slowly through the trees, moving deliberately, gracefully, almost like it was searching for something. Or someone. I leaned closer, pulse quickening again. It moved closer to the camera, then stopped suddenly, as though sensing it was being watched. The glow pulsed once, twice, then dissipated. I played it back several times, absorbing the implications. This shimmer wasn't confined to our home or Caleb. It moved independently, had a purpose, an intention. Maybe it was drawn to us because of Caleb or Cooper, or maybe there was something else entirely, something bigger. In the morning, I shared the footage with Claire. She watched quietly, sipping her coffee, expression unreadable until she finally spoke. It's exploring, it's aware. It knows where we are. I nodded slowly. Or it's guiding us somewhere. The idea resonated deeply. Perhaps we weren't merely observers, but participants, entrusted with something profound and delicate. Over the next few days, Caleb's interactions with the shimmer intensified. He spoke more clearly now, forming simple sentences with startling clarity. He'd point and talk to it openly, always cheerful, always calm. One afternoon, Caleb sat coloring at the kitchen table, Cooper at his feet. Suddenly he paused, looking at the window. "They're coming," he said simply. Claire looked up from washing dishes. "Who's coming, sweetie?" Caleb smiled, eyes sparkling. "Friends." That night, the shimmer returned with company. Not one or two, but 3 glowing lights, hovering gently above Caleb's crib as Cooper watched quietly. Caleb reached out his hand, giggling softly. "Friends," he repeated. The lights seemed to respond, glowing brighter, swirling gently around him. Cooper wagged his tail gently, eyes soft, completely at ease. Claire and I watched in awe from the doorway, breathless. It felt sacred, profound. There was no fear, only the calm certainty that something extraordinary was unfolding. Days blended seamlessly, filled with small, beautiful moments. Claire and I found ourselves speaking less about the shimmer and more about what it meant. We began to research older stories, folklore about guardian spirits, light beings who watched over children, guiding and protecting them. The connections were undeniable, comforting even. Then came a letter. It arrived one morning, hand-addressed, the paper thick and soft. Inside was a single page, penned in careful handwriting. "Your story is familiar." My grandson also had such visitors. The lights watched over him, spoke to him in dreams. Our dog knew, always guarding him closely. Trust what you feel. You are custodians of something beautiful. Protect it, and it will protect you. It was unsigned. Claire held the letter for a long time, her eyes misty. Someone knows exactly what we're experiencing. I touched her hand gently. Maybe they're reminding us we're not alone. The following evening, Claire's parents visited again, their presence grounding and familiar. As we talked, laughing over old stories, Cooper lay quietly by Caleb's side, alert but calm. When Claire's mother rose to check on Caleb in the nursery, Cooper followed closely. From the hallway, we heard her soft voice. "Well, hello. Who are your new friends, Caleb?" Claire and I exchanged a quick look, hearts pounding. Moments later, her mother emerged, smiling gently, a curious but calm expression on her face. "I don't know if you'll believe me," she began carefully, "but I swear I saw lights, small glowing lights above Caleb's crib." Claire smiled softly. "We know." Her mother sat beside us, eyes wide but accepting. It felt peaceful. It felt like they belonged here. "They do," I said gently. She squeezed Claire's hand, understanding passing silently between them. That night, Claire and I sat awake long after everyone had gone to bed, discussing what her mother had seen. "It's comforting," Claire whispered. "We aren't imagining any of this." I agreed. "It's real, and it's meant to be here." Days turned into weeks, each one bringing a gentle, growing certainty. Caleb thrived, his joy contagious. Cooper seemed lighter, his duties shared now openly with the lights that visited regularly, bringing a profound peace to our home. I continued documenting, carefully archiving every encounter, every new development. Claire continued journaling, recording her dreams, the small, intuitive whispers she felt growing stronger within her. Then, on a crisp autumn evening, something shifted. Cooper suddenly grew restless, pacing nervously near the nursery, whining softly. Claire and I exchanged worried glances, tension building. "What is it, Coop?" Claire asked softly. Caleb stood quietly, watching Cooper intently. Then he spoke, voice clear and calm. "They need help." We froze, processing his words carefully. "Who needs help, Caleb?" Claire asked gently. "Friends," he said solemnly, pointing toward the window, toward the woods outside. Heart racing, I understood. The shimmer wasn't simply visiting, it was calling to us, needing something in return, trusting us. Claire looked at me, eyes steady. "We need to go." I nodded, determined, resolute. Tonight. The decision settled within us, calm and unshakable. We bundled Caleb warmly, gathered a flashlight, and stepped out into the cool, dark night, Cooper leading the way with quiet confidence. The woods were waiting, silent, watchful, and we walked forward, ready to answer. The forest behind our house was no more than a half-mile stretch of gentle trees, tangled vines, and patches of prairie grass where deer sometimes wandered, and squirrels chased each other through the low branches. We had walked it many times before, always during the day, always with Caleb nestled in a carrier or strapped snug against one of our backs. But that night was different. We stepped into it under a sky full of stars, with only the rustling leaves and Cooper's soft panting guiding us forward. Caleb was bundled in Claire's arms, wrapped in a thick blanket with his head resting against her shoulder. He wasn't scared. If anything, he looked curious, his eyes darting around like he was waiting for something. Cooper walked slightly ahead, ears perked and tail still. Every few feet, he would pause, look back at us, and then continue on. He knew exactly where we were going. The light shimmered faintly just past the tree line, a subtle glow barely visible from the yard. But now that we were in the woods, it became easier to see. It pulsed gently from deeper within, like a lantern beckoning us toward it. Not flashing, not urgent, patient, waiting. As we moved forward, the silence shifted. The night sounds didn't disappear. They softened. The usual chorus of insects and distant owls faded to the background, replaced by a low, thrumming quiet, like we had stepped into a pocket of air separate from the rest of the world. Claire whispered, "I feel like we're walking into something sacred." I nodded. We are. We reached a small clearing not far from the creek. The grass was taller here, the trees bending slightly overhead, framing the open space like a natural arch. And in the center, the shimmer hovered. It wasn't alone. 3 separate lights floated in slow circles around a central glow, larger, brighter, almost pulsing with energy. The movement was fluid, elegant, like a silent ballet. Cooper stopped at the edge of the clearing, sat down, and stared with his full attention. Caleb lifted his head and pointed. There. We stepped into the clearing, our breath catching. The moment we did, the lights shifted. They moved toward us slowly, cautiously, not in fear, but like they were assessing us. The central glow brightened slightly, casting soft shadows across our faces. Claire held Caleb closer. "Do you think they brought us here for a reason?" I stepped forward, trying not to break whatever trust was holding the moment together. "We're here," I said aloud. "We don't know what you want, but we're listening." The largest shimmer pulsed, and suddenly the woods around us lit up, not with blinding light, but with a soft illumination that made everything shimmer. Leaves, bark, even the air. It wasn't magic in the movie sense. It was subtle, natural, like watching the first frost melt in the morning sun. Then we heard it. A whisper, like before, but this time layered. Voices. Not words exactly, but emotions carried in sound. Grief, hope, gratitude. Claire clutched my hand. "It's them. They've been waiting for someone to come." Caleb reached toward the lights and said, "It's okay now." The clearing pulsed with warmth, and for a moment the lights stopped moving. They hovered, suspended, then slowly began to merge. Not disappearing, joining. The smaller ones folded into the central light, which glowed brighter, then gently began to drift toward Caleb. Cooper stood, his posture respectful, almost reverent. The shimmer reached Caleb and hovered close, then touched his chest lightly, a glow transferring from it to him in a way that seemed symbolic, not physical. Then the light retracted, pulsing once more before drifting upward. It rose above the treetops and slowly vanished into the night sky. Silence returned, but it wasn't empty. It was peaceful. We stood still for a long time. Claire was the first to speak. "What just happened?" I knelt next to Cooper, who was watching the stars now. "I think they were saying goodbye." "No," Claire said softly. "Not goodbye. Thank you." Caleb rested his head on her shoulder again, eyes drooping, utterly calm. We walked back in silence, Cooper leading the way. The air felt warmer, the trees less imposing, like we had crossed into a version of the forest that had been holding its breath for years, finally allowed to exhale. Back at home, we laid Caleb down gently. He stirred, but didn't wake, sighing in his sleep like he'd just finished something important. I sat at the edge of the bed, watching him breathe. Claire placed a hand on my back. He understood more than we did. He always has. That night, I downloaded the footage from the camera I had left mounted near the clearing weeks ago. I hadn't checked it in ages, mostly because it rarely picked up anything unusual. But this time, the whole encounter was there. The shimmer, the clearing, the way it approached Caleb. The pulse of light. I saved it in a new folder, labeled it Forest Contact. Claire came in and sat beside me. "What do we do with all this?" "We keep it safe," I said. "We keep watching, keep listening." She nodded, brushing a hand through my hair. "I think they'll come back. When they need to." In the days that followed, life returned to normal, but it was a deeper normal. Richer. Caleb's laughter seemed to carry more weight, like his joy was shared with something beyond us. Cooper remained as loyal as ever, maybe even more relaxed now, like a burden had lifted. We didn't speak much of the shimmer around others, not out of fear, but because it was sacred. A quiet thread in our family story that no one else would understand unless they had lived it. One rainy afternoon, Caleb and I sat on the floor building towers with wooden blocks, while Cooper snored beside us. Caleb suddenly looked up and said, "They're still here, just quieter now." I didn't ask who. I didn't need to. That night I reviewed the nursery camera out of habit. Nothing unusual, just soft shadows and Caleb's gentle breathing. But then, at 3:02 a.m., one shimmer returned. Briefly. Just for a moment. It hovered above Cooper as he slept. And then it vanished. I smiled, closed the laptop, and went back to bed. Whatever came next, we weren't afraid. Because we had Cooper. And because Caleb, in his quiet, luminous way, had made us all believers. I never thought a story could stretch across so many quiet nights, across so many unspoken moments, small things, like the twitch of a dog's ear or the flicker of a nursery light. Yet somehow, it had. What began as a mystery, a dog staring into a crib, a shimmer on a baby monitor, had become something more than we ever imagined. And now, with the season turning again, I could feel the story was reaching its final chapter. Not because it had faded, but because it had fulfilled its purpose. It began subtly. Caleb, now nearly 2, started sleeping through the night without stirring. No more reaching for unseen visitors, no more whispered greetings into the air. The shimmer appeared less and less. I checked the recordings every morning out of habit, but most nights were quiet now, peaceful. Cooper had changed, too. He was still devoted, still shadowed Caleb like always, but he was quieter. Not just older, though he had more gray around the muzzle now, but somehow content, as if he'd completed a task that no one else had known he'd taken on. One evening, just before dusk, Claire and I sat on the porch with Caleb in her lap and Cooper resting at her feet. The sky was painted with streaks of soft orange and fading lavender, and the trees behind our house rustled gently in the early autumn breeze. Claire brushed a hand through Caleb's hair. "He hasn't talked about the lights in weeks." I nodded, watching the forest where it had all happened. "I think they're done now, at least for us." "But why?" she asked, not out of worry, more out of wonder. Why were they here in the first place? Why Caleb? I didn't have a solid answer. But I remembered that night in the clearing, the way the lights had merged, the gratitude in the air, the word that had echoed softly into the trees. Safe. "I think he was the bridge," I said finally. "And Cooper was the guide." Claire kissed the top of Caleb's head. "He changed something, didn't he?" I looked at our son, his calm gaze, his quiet strength, the way he looked at the world like it whispered to him, and he actually understood. He helped them find peace, and maybe helped us find it too. That night, we didn't see the shimmer, and we didn't the night after that either. Then, a week later, something new happened. It was a rainy Sunday morning, the kind where the clouds hang low and the world feels muffled. Caleb was playing with blocks in the living room, and Cooper lay beside him, tail gently tapping the floor every time Caleb laughed. Claire was in the kitchen when I heard her call my name. I came in to find her holding a small white envelope in her hands, addressed simply, "To the Whitaker family." No return address, no stamps. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper. It read, "You gave them rest. Thank you. Keep watching. Others will need you." No signature. Nothing else. Claire looked at me, eyes wide. "Do you think it's real?" I read it again. And I did. I didn't know how or why, but someone out there knew what we had seen, knew what we had carried, knew what Caleb and Cooper had done. And suddenly, I understood. It wasn't just about our family. The shimmer had come because we were ready to see it, because Caleb could hear it, because Cooper had stood guard when no one else could. But now that gift needed to continue. Not in the same way. Not with flickering lights or mysterious encounters, but with openness, with listening, with watching. That night, I installed a fresh battery in the monitor and set up the old camera in a new position. Not to catch the shimmer, but to remind me that anything was possible, and we might be called to bear witness again. The days passed gently. Caleb began asking bigger questions now, about animals, trees, stars, about why Cooper had white in his fur now, and why the shimmer hadn't come back. Claire answered with her usual honesty. Sometimes, when the work is done, it's time to rest. Cooper remained steady, loyal, watching. Until the day came when he didn't. It was a Thursday morning. I found him in his bed by the fireplace, lying still, eyes closed, a soft smile across his face, the way dogs smile when they're dreaming of running. I knelt beside him, touched his back. No movement. Claire came in and saw, then dropped to her knees beside me. We didn't speak for a long time. Caleb stood behind us quietly. Then he walked forward, knelt beside Cooper, and placed his small hand on his fur. He whispered, "Thank you, Coop." That night, the shimmer returned one last time. Claire and I both saw it, standing in the nursery doorway. It hovered above Caleb, then drifted slowly down to Cooper's empty bed. It pulsed once, then faded. We knew what it meant. It wasn't grief that filled the room. It was grace. We buried Cooper beneath the dogwood tree he had helped us plant. Caleb placed a small stuffed bear beside the stone we set, and Claire tied one of Cooper's old red bandanas around the base of the trunk. The wind rustled through the branches, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of light pass through the leaves. Maybe I imagined it. But I don't think so. In the weeks that followed, we adjusted to life without Cooper. The house was quieter, and sometimes that quiet felt hollow. But Caleb was stronger now, more independent, and the bond we shared, our little family, was deeper than before. One morning, as I packed away the last of the camera gear, Caleb came to my side. He was holding a drawing. In it, a dog lay under a tree. Above it floated two soft shapes, barely visible. He pointed. "That's Cooper. And the lights." I didn't cry. I just hugged him, tightly. And I realized then that our story hadn't ended. It had changed forms, passed down. Like the shimmer, it was quiet now. But still here, still watching, and always waiting for the next time it would be needed.